This video is sponsored by PCBWay. Visit them via the link in the description below for all your PCB services. I've been using them for years, so make sure you try them out. Hi everyone, welcome back to workshop. This is just a little follow-up video of the L30-1 power supply that I sort of renovated in the last video, and I just wanted to finish off the power supply by doing a little bit of calibration. Let's get it operational and calibrated properly. And also I've got the Farnell badge label plate, whatever you want to call it, that goes across the front here. I don't really have the proper manual for this unit here. I've got a calibration manual, but unfortunately it's for the fully transistorized version, not the op-amp version that I've got here. But we're just going to wing it. It looks like it's pretty easy to do. So if I just let you see what's going on here. As I explained in my last video, you've got 4 potentiometers on the circuit board itself. 2 for setting the full scale of the meter, depending whether you're in voltage mode or current mode. And you've got 2 potentiometers for adjusting the span of the output voltage. There is no 0 pots on this power supply at all. Basically what you're required to do is, when you put the 2 front panel controls, the 0 and the fine, right down at minimum, you can see we're more or less at 0 volts anyway. The circuit's been designed that way, and the only 0 control you've got is the physical 0 on the meter itself, which we will need to adjust. In my last video I did explain that there's actually a hole in the PCB that you can put a small screwdriver through to access the 0 control, the physical control on the actual meter. So we'll start with that. Everything's got to be done with the 0 set first, so we'll do that first. So there's the circuit board, and there's the hole there right at the end of the screwdriver. Not sure if you can see that, but it is marked meter 0. So I'll just turn this power supply back around again so that you can see the front of it. There we go. And the meter is off to the side, but we won't need that at the moment because we're just adjusting a physical 0. So I've got both pots right down at minimum there, and I'll go in carefully with my small screwdriver. Luckily I had one that was pretty short, and I can feel we're in it now, and I'll just adjust. That's the wrong way, so I'll just bring it up until it's perfectly on the 0. There is actually a big shadow, so let's not get put off by that, but there we go, happy enough with that. I have let the power supply warm up for a good 20 minutes, so we should be good to go. There we go, happy with that. So I don't think we need to touch that 0 again. Everything else will be done with the pots. So the next thing I want to do is, ignoring the meter, I want to set these to fully maximum, and this is supposed to be a 30 volt power supply, and as you can see we're getting about 31.5 volts there on the output. So what I want to do is adjust the span pots to adjust the output to exactly 30 volts when both pots are fully clockwise. So there's the 4 pots I will be adjusting. They're marked P1, P2, P3 and P4, and luckily that's mapped directly onto the schematic, so we should be able to adjust the right pot first time. So what we're going to do is adjust P2. That's the pot that feeds both the fine and coarse adjust front panel pots there. So by adjusting that one there, we can set the maximum voltage for the power supply on its output. So that's P2. So let's find P2. And P2 is this one here. These are just single turn pots. It's a little bit unfortunate, but nice to have a 10 turn pot in there for some proper fine adjustment. But there we go, you can see the meter there is moving. But I'm not worried about that at the moment because I can independently set that up again. What I'm looking for is exactly 30 volts on the output. It just needs the tiniest of turns. It'll be I think a little bit hard to get to spot on. I think I'm close enough at that, 30.023 volts, so that's fine. And the meter is actually spot on 30, so it looks like the calibration was fine for the pots for setting up the meter full scale on volts mode. It looks like all I needed to do was adjust the P2 there to set the output voltage to 30 volts. Now we should be fully linear now, so if I just test one of the voltages, I'll just set this up to 15 volts exactly, and there it goes there, and we're close enough, 15.06. Try another one, let's try 5 volts. That's about 5 volts there, 4.96, yeah, very slightly non-linear. I mean, it is just an analog power supply, so I think we're good to go at that. And just to double check, what do we get when we screw both the pots right down? More or less 0 volts. So we've got the 0, we've got the full scale, everything in between will just be what it is. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to try and calibrate the current side of things. So I've got my electronic load hooked up off camera. I've left the voltmeter hooked up, and this 2 wires here go way off to the electronic load. So just for display purposes, I'm actually measuring the voltage here at the power supply. I don't really care what the voltage is at the other end of the load, because that'll be subject to any volt drop on these cables here. They are pretty heavy, but they're not that heavy. So the idea is you measure the voltage at the power supply. But like I said, not worried about that. We're calibrating the current. Well, it helps when you put the electronic load around the right way, so I've just swapped a couple of cables there, no damage. Electronic load just gave a little beep, and on the display it came up reverse, so I knew immediately what was wrong, but yeah, it happens to the best of us. So let's go and try and calibrate the current output. Right, I've got the voltage set to maximum, 30 volts as you can see here. Got it switched to amps, so I'll just turn on the electronic load. It's reading 30 volts as well actually, and it's set for 1 amp. So we should see the meter go straight to 1 amp when I turn it on now. Yep, and there we go. And actually it's bang on 1 amp. It's perfect. So the manual does give some information regarding adjusting the current limit pot. I've got the meter accurate for 0 to 1 amps. That's fine. But you need to be able to set up the maximum the current limit can be set to. And what they're saying in the manual is adjust your load, not electronic load, didn't have them back then. Adjust your load to 1.1 amps and then turn this pot fully clockwise, and then adjust the current limit max control on the pot here until the meter just starts to fall. So what you've actually gone ahead and done is you've set this current limit to 1.1 amps when it's fully clockwise, not 1 amp. You don't want 1 amp because you want to be able to achieve an output of 1 amp nice and reliably. So we'll do that now. I'll just set up 1.1 amps on the electronic load. There we go, and you can see it's kicked down. So now we'll adjust the pot. There we go. So I'll just adjust it now. This one's fully clockwise. We've got 1.1 amps load. Just adjust the pot until the needle starts to fall, and you know with that fully clockwise you've got that set to 1.1 amps. And now if I go back to 1 amp, the meter comes back up and we're good to go. And you can see also with a 1 amp load there, I'm still getting a nice 30 volts on the output of the power supply. Okay, that's all disconnected now. I'm happy with the calibration, happy with the functionality. So now let's look at the case and what I've done there. So first things first, I did actually get the nameplate for the front. Now this isn't the one that was on the ad where I purchased the power supply. It got lost. I had to email the seller several times before he managed to come clean and say he'd lost it. Said he'd shipped it, but then said he'd lost it. So he managed to find another one. Unfortunately, this was for an L30-2, which is a 2 amp version of this power supply. However, I'm happy with that. I've managed to get rid of the -2. etc. off of the front, and it'll do me. It's maybe not quite as nice looking as I would have hoped, but never mind. So that just goes, it just hangs on the front here, and that's that there. So now I'll put the cover back on, and then we'll look at the bezel. Now, never really noticed in the ad when I bought the power supply that it was actually missing the bezel, because it don't look too bad, but when you see it alongside other Farnell power supplies that I've got, yes, it is definitely stands at a mile. It's missing the bezels. Now obviously I couldn't find any second-hand ones without buying a whole new power supply, so what I've managed to do is 3D print my own bezels here, and the way that works is they closely resemble the original ones, but I just made them a little bit simpler. So that just goes on there. This one here, I've just got like a 1.5mm groove right down the one side of the 3D printed bezel there, and then this one here, yeah, it goes on like that, and then this top piece just goes on there like that, and that's it. Does look a little bit odd because in the other power supplies I've got, this is actually a metal top with the plastic sides, but I don't think it looks too bad. It did nicely, the nameplate nicely butts up against the inside edges of the 3D printed bezel, so I don't think it looks too bad. Now the last thing I need to look at is the knobs. It's missing the caps, and I don't have any that size, but what I did manage to find on Farnell was some replacement knobs which are very similar to the originals, and also obviously with the right caps. So I'll go away and change them now. So there we go, just got the last cap to put on, and that's them in place. And I mean, they just look very similar to the original ones there, virtually identical. I'll put a link in the description down below to the knobs that I purchased them from Farnell, so I'll put the part numbers down below. So there we go, that's this little restoration job done. Quite happy with it. I'm going to put it up on the workbench, and I'm sure it'll see some service over the coming years. Thanks for watching.